think we're just about out of time. So if I could just make a few quick comments. Like everybody, I was so struck by what I heard. The insight. We often pat ourselves on our backs in the committee because we're a very hard-working committee and are very engaged in the issue. And I can speak for all members across all parties and none that we want to solve this, and we want to solve this existential crisis as quickly as we can. But I have to say that the engagement today certainly inspired me, and I hear that it inspired my colleagues as well. We've learned a lot from you. Very struck by some of the points made. Orna, I think it was from the podcast you mentioned, every euro you spend is like casting a vote for the future you want. That is very powerful. And that alludes to the economic system that we have. And it is not fit for a purpose. It needs to be turned around incredibly, how we do that. And how we do that while maintaining livelihoods, maintaining order is really, really challenging. But you're right, Maud. We do have to change the system, the economic system that we have. And Maud, your earlier contribution, where you mentioned about the islands, and you drew a parallel between what the islands are facing. So Clare Island, and you talked about the pier, will be flooded on an annual basis, I think within a decade. And you talked about the contamination of the freshwater supplies, and if I understood you correctly, you were saying that you can see these real things happening, and islands can see them perhaps sooner than bigger islands and mainland countries will say. And we should look to the islands actually to understand some of the challenges, the supply chain challenges. You talked about how you would have to travel the day before because of the increased frequency of the Atlantic storms, the piers. I think Runa needs a new pier, I think you said. It reminded me of that Saw Doctors song, "Will you meet me on Clare Island?" and we'll take the ferry out to Runa. But it was really thought-provoking, I have to say. I was really happy to hear the call for congestion charges and about equalising the burden across society between urban and rural. And I think the rural-urban divide is a really unhelpful construct. Both need each other. They really do. They're two sides of the same coin. We're all part of society, and we have to work together. And I think you're probably right that rural people are unfairly burdened with the challenge of climate change because of the circumstances they find themselves in. And I absolutely agree with you about congestion charges. I think a number of contributors made that point. There's a real challenge that we have as a political system is that we tend to agree fairly well on targets and ambition, and we're going to get to there in this time frame, and we all tick the box and say, yeah, that's good. Where politics really, really struggles is policies and implementing policies, because policies do create division, and often they're really, really hard to get across the line. And we saw even in the last year, like a simple cycle lane in Galway, thousands and thousands and thousands of people reacted. They did not want this because parking was going to be removed. And that sounds like a simple thing to achieve, but it's actually not. The reality is that all climate action is hard, all policies, all change is hard. So politics needs to figure out, the targets and the ambition are really important. You have to have those. You have to have a vision for where you want to go, but you have to be serious about the real measures that are required and that are going to have to be implemented. And we will not get that implementation unless we get really constructive debate and engagement. And was it Ruth you mentioned about bottom-up approach? Or maybe, was it Orna? Yeah. I think that's where we're failing. We do have a top-down approach. That's the way our system is. There's examples of where we have trialed bottom-up approach, and it's been really successful, and we should do more of it. And this is an example of it as well. And we need a hell of a lot more, because we're not going to get those policies implemented unless we engage with everybody who is affected by them meaningfully. So not simply through consultation phases of, projects, email this address, or, what are your thoughts on this project? Like that's not meaningful engagement. There has to be talking, debating, challenging each other, and that has to happen across society from the community level, and it needs to go right up to the top. So I think this has been a very positive engagement. I think it's a start, and only a start. We should only consider it that. We have a long, long, long way to go. I'd like to thank all the young people for attending here today, and for this worthwhile engagement. And it was so interesting to hear your perspectives on the climate challenges facing us in the next few decades. It was important to hear your views. And as I said, you've given us a lot to think about. And if I can quote Kofi Annan, when he addressed Global Citizen Live in London back in 2018, he said, "You're never too young to lead, and we are never too old to learn." And I think that is absolutely true. I want to thank the Cathaoirleach for facilitating us with the Shannon Chamber today. It really has made this event possible, and we are very grateful to you, Cathaoirleach. And I'll pass over to the Cathaoirleach now for the final word.